gonna drop you now.
Wait, no, wait!
The kill is always new.
I have just learned that Colt has betrayed us.
This is death.
The Isle of Black Reef experienced a cataclysmic event which tore the fabric of space and time.
What kind of the world is this?
I'm done playing this your way. It's the cult show from now on.
Colt, you're never, ever going to break the loop.
I'll give it this as well.
Deathloop is GameSpot's Game of the Year for 2021. So to join me to talk about how we landed at this decision, as well as why we love this game so much, I've got Tamoor Hussain, who reviewed the game, managing editor of GameSpot. Hi, Tam.
Hi, how are we doing? Game of the year, let's go. I'm sure there will be no dissent. I'm sure no one in the comments will have other things to say about this. But yeah, this is GameSpot's Game of the Year 2021 in a year packed with a lot of contenders. We thought it was going to be a lighter year, and it definitely for a long time felt like a lighter year, but when it came to sitting down and talking over the best games of the year, it was surprisingly jam-packed, and it was a close race, and ultimately what swung it was a lot of heartfelt, a lot of emotional, and a lot of passionate discussions. So for people who might want some insight into kind of the format, we take the Game of the Year discussion quite seriously. Obviously not too seriously, because we are people who love games and don't want it to escalate into some weird nonsense. But like, we spent weeks kind of collating everyone's top 10s. We worked to give them all a ranking and collating points attached to them depending on where they appeared in top 10 rankings. And then gathered together across multiple time zones, multiple days, and talked through each of the games one by one and presented cases for why they think they should be in the top 10, not in the top 10, in the top 5, and then ultimately we all made a case for games as Game of the Year. Based on the discussions, Deathloop came out as number 1, and I'm glad that it did.
Yeah, me too. So we're here today to chat a little bit about it because I think you and I are the biggest sort of Arkane fans on staff, certainly two of the most vocal people when we were having the deliberations. Overall, I mean, it was the clear standout Game of the Year for me. I just unbelievably impressed with it. And I think what really struck me about Deathloop is just how elegant it is and how in a year of time loop games, like Forgotten City, Loop Hero in a way, I guess you could say is a sort of time loop game, this like Deathloop managed to stand above the crowd. And I think the way that did that is that it was so elegant. It had the potential to be a very confusing affair, but the way that it was laid out, the way that its systems worked and fed into each other and constantly felt like you were having meaningful progression, as well as on top of it all having like a cast of characters who I think for Arkane games in particular were way more human and you could identify with them more than ever. And like the fact that Colt was an amnesic hitman assassin who's you know kind of learning about the world as much as you are with him, just it was all this really compelling package that I loved so much. And I say that as a huge fan of Arkane games. It was amazing to see this sort of evolution of things that they've done before and it all work out so well for Deathloop. But Tam, you reviewed the game for us, and it was also like any other hint that this might get Game of the Year. It did get a 10 out of 10 from us, a coveted 10 out of 10. Can you go through, you know, what that review process was like, as well as why you feel Deathloop was so deserving, not just of Game of the Year, but of that 10 out of 10?
Yeah, so before we jump into that, as a point of clarification, 10 out of 10 doesn't mean perfection. There was a lot of dissent towards us giving, and there always is, giving a game a 10 out of 10, and that's fine. People have different opinions of things, but the important thing to remind people is 10 out of 10 doesn't mean perfection. It means, to me, something exceptional and something that I feel like everyone, or you should make an effort to experience this because it's important, and that's how I approach it. I think what is really interesting to me, and the way I frame my kind of reasoning and thinking for, and our reasoning and thinking as a team for why it is Game of the Year, I framed it as a magic trick. And the idea of it being magic tricks are incredible, right? Like it doesn't matter who you are. You can be an adult, you can be a child, you can be somewhere in between, you could be, you know, any level of cynical. Magic tricks have this unique ability of just tearing down any boundaries. Like you watch a magic trick and it inspires a childlike awe. Like even the most stoic people, they kind of break down in front of a magic trick and they're wowed by it, right? It's like, wow, this is incredible. It is that childlike wonder where you forget all life's worries, or you forget the rules of life and the rules of nature for a moment and believe that something truly extraordinary has happened. And Deathloop feels like a magic trick is happening in front of your eyes. So the thing that this game does differently is it gives us the second part of the magic trick that we want most, but so very rarely are given because magicians like to keep their magic secret. And that is, like, we ask ourselves after seeing the trick, how did you do that? This is a game about Arkane showing us how they do their magic tricks. They take the very design of the game is taking the things that everyone comes to their games for, the immersive worlds, the kind of clockwork nature, the many interlocking mechanics, the stealth, the action, the powers, the guns, the puzzles within puzzles, the clockwork mansions, the Jindosh locks, that kind of stuff. And it gives it to you piece by piece by piece until you understand it and you build the jigsaw puzzle yourself. And by the time you're done building it, you have this incredible understanding of how they put their world together. And then along with that, they have this time loop mechanic. They go to pains to not try and pigeonhole their game, and it's easy to understand why. But if we wanted to do that, this kind of roguelike approach to it, the action game, the stealth game, and you pick up the individual pieces of it and you start to put it together, and then you're able to look at the whole of it and understand how one part connects to the next and how you can best move through it.
I think in a way, to take what you just said there and to kind of put it towards another point about why I think Deathloop is so special, is that it really respects the player in a way that a lot of other games don't. Like, it respects the player. Like, the hand-holding to get you up to speed with how the game works, they show you a lot in the early hours, and then they trust the player to be able to take all those concepts, take those mechanics, and then form and forge their own path. Like, they trust the player in order to, if they want to explore, they encourage that exploration. And part of it is, as you were saying, with like combat, you feel like you're not pigeonholed into being, you clean hands ghost. I can, in one loop, or even in one district at one time of day, I can go all guns blazing, and then the next I can sneak through. And at no point does the game ever penalize you for that. The game encourages this exploration and experimentation. And ultimately, the way that it also really respects the player is that at no point does anything ever feel wasted. There's always a chance. Like, there's another slab to find. There is another lead to follow. There's another weapon to get. And then the way that your actions, you can then infuse those things and take them with you and build a bigger, better, more powerful cult to take into the next loop. I think it's just endlessly rewarding. And so, yeah, you have this end goal of defeating all the visionaries and breaking the loop, and like that's the main thing you've been told to do throughout the whole thing. But also you have just so much more to do, and like there are puzzles in there that are fun to explore, but you can totally ignore them if you choose to, and it's just endlessly rewarding.
Yeah, and I think that one thing that is perhaps a tangent, but like Arkane is a studio that's always been punching above its weight. It's easy to forget because they're owned by Bethesda and now Microsoft. It feels like they're a massive team, and they have two studios, Lyon and Austin, and they collaborate, but like they're not a massive team. It's not relatively speaking, compared to a lot of other AAA games, their team is, relatively speaking, smaller, much smaller, but it never feels like that. They make games that they never feel like anything less than a AAA experience.
Yeah, and it's also, I mean, the way that Arkane keeps pushing themselves with like each new game has something just they take that formula and they just build on it and just make something even better. And so I think one of the things that I particularly love most about Deathloop is the fact that, you know, instead of having this kind of quiet protagonist that you kind of pour yourself into. I mean, Emily and Corvo eventually would have a few lines, but never anything sort of meaningful. No real big, powerful personality that you could be like, oh yeah, that's an Emily line or that's a Corvo line. It's like, I felt like Colt was a person, and I thought the writing was so sharp and so funny, and it was so clever, the fact that he and Juliana would be like pretty much the only people who would remember things across loops, and seeing the way that their relationship would grow, the way they would talk to each other, and the way that they had this playful cat and mouse, and that was what drew me through the story. And like, if ever I felt like I would, you know, go off the beaten track a little bit too much and maybe not devote as many loops to actually the story, that would be the thing that would bring me back to it. And I loved those characters so much. And like, even the visionaries, like, they're all god awful people, but you know, Alexis Dorsey, I just, you know, I love to hate him, and I think it's been a real triumph for them in terms of writing. So
yeah, the characterization, like, a lot of it is subtle and a lot of it is overt, and I think it works on multiple levels. On the subtlety level, like the lines that are happening in between loops and during loops that give the relationship between them nuance and history without playing their hand and showing their hand and revealing too much. The kind of thread of who they are and what they mean to each other is something that they kind of use to string you along through the entire game. And there is an art to giving you just enough to keep you on the hook, and they pretty much nail it here. That's the subtle stuff. And then the overt stuff is something that I think deserves to be recognized as the representation of it that is involved. Like, Colt and Juliana are black characters, and obviously we are not the people to kind of speak at length about this. There are various people out there, and there's been a lot of writing and videos to discuss the importance of it, but we'd be remiss if we didn't actually point it out and say that factored into our decision. And the reason it factored in was because not only was there representation, but it felt so effortless and it felt natural, which wouldn't have been the case. Like, this is something probably they worked so hard on. This is a game that I feel Arkane knows is not for everyone. Like, and that is kind of something that they factored into design, and having spoken to them, they knew that not everyone's going to love it. Not everyone's going to feel the way we feel about it, and it is going to be a divisive game. And for Arkane, in speaking to Dinga, the director, and Sebastian and Dana and various other people who worked on the game, they just wanted a few people to like it. They just wanted it to connect with a certain amount of people, and if that was the case, that is good enough for them, and it definitely did. And the thing I'll say is, you might be out there thinking, how did this game win Game of the Year? It is divisive. But I'd ask you to remember that all the most divisive games are usually the ones that have the most impact and are remembered as being landmark moments. For me, the thing that made me fight for it is like thinking back to other games that I felt were divisive and the impact they've had on my life. Stuff like Sekiro, stuff like Demon's Souls, you know, stuff like Breath of the Wild is a divisive game. You might think, no, it isn't, but yes, it is. There was a time when people said this game is weird and it doesn't make any sense. An open world Zelda game, that's not what Zelda is. And it is one of the greatest games of all time. There was a time when people said Dark Souls, Demon Souls, too hard, not, you know, or like unplayable for the average gamer. People really did not like those experiences, and look what they have become. So yeah, Deathloop is divisive. Maybe you don't like it, but I feel like it's a landmark moment. And I said this in my write-up, but Deathloop is also a template, a lesson, a masterclass on how to design an Arkane game. And you might think, why would people want to know that? And the reason people would want to know that is because no other developer comes close to making immersive sims the way that Arkane does. They're untouchable. And they're not hiding the secrets of that magic anymore. They are showing you how to do it. And that is what Deathloop is. And I feel like going forward, there are going to be designers, developers that are empowered by playing this game. And the industry is going to be better off because of that.
Couldn't agree more. Well, there you have it. That's why we chose Deathloop as our game of the year. As you would have seen at the top of this video, we did manage to give the lovely folks at Arkane the trophy. We'll leave you with a little clip from the rest of that that kind of trophy handover. But Tam, if folks want to read your review, read your write-ups, where should they go? Where can they find you?
They should go to GameSpot.com. You can find my review there, in which I go in depth about why I liked Deathloop, and the score is there. It's a 10 out of 10. There's also a video review on youtube.com/GameSpot. If you want more recent, if you just go to the homepage, you'll probably find the best of category, or it should be on the homepage for quite some time. You can read a kind of reflection on Deathloop many months later, and ultimately why a kind of justification and explanation for why we felt it was ultimately Game of the Year for 2021. And you can find me on Twitter at Tamoor.
You can find me on Twitter at LucyJamesGames. I cut that video review, so some of that gameplay is mine if you want to go judge it. A lot of it is Tam's as well. Thank you so much for watching. We have all of our kind of best of the year lists up, so best Xbox games, we have best PlayStation, Nintendo, PC, as well as our overall 10 best games of 2021 right here on GameSpot. Thanks for watching. We'll see you in 2022.
Okay, so when we were setting up this interview and we were talking to you guys, we said that we're making a video about a bunch of games and celebrating them released this year. That was a lie. We're actually not doing that. We set up this interview just to talk to you, just because we wanted to give you something. So, do you want to go and hand it over? You got, yeah. I'll give you this as well. So, yeah, we haven't.
Wow! Can I not talk? Wow! Oh, we are so proud. That's yeah, we are so happy. Thank you very much.
Yeah, this is amazing. I mean, honestly, like I know everyone's already said this, but we never expected this type of reception. Like, we always had faith. I mean, I always had faith personally, and I think everyone would agree. We always had faith in the project and believed that it would sort of stand on its own two legs and be something that we could be proud of. But yeah, we're just really elated that the community and everyone is into our game.
This game is very special to me in terms of the moment in my life when I worked on it. So I'm very glad it's special to other people too.
Yeah, outside of just thank you, it's amazing because we just love what we do and we are so humbled to see that it resonates with people. So.
Yeah, and it will make a brighter future for Arkane. You know, it's a gift, really, and for the years to come, you know, it's a great gift, honestly.
Actually, I have a last one, like for, I mean, anecdote. It's funny because generally, you have great resistance to jet lag, man. Funnily enough, like to tell you how much we are happy and happy, surprised, pleasantly surprised. Like this time, no one even made that bet. Like no one was expecting that. So, wow, really happy.